Good evening, everyone, and welcome to SocialFlight Live. I'm Jeff Simon. We have a fantastic show for you this evening. John and Martha King are here, and we are going to celebrate 50 years of King Schools with them. Before we get started, just a few things. First of all, SocialFlight is just booming right now with tens of thousands of aviation events and destinations. So many things to do that are going on as the weather warms across the country and the northern latitudes become friendly for flying again. So we have tons of fly-ins, seminars, group get-togethers, pancake breakfast, you name it. It is all there, so please go check out SocialFlight.com and the free apps for Apple and Android devices. We also have our FAA Learning Center there where you can get wings credit on demand for courses that are available directly through SocialFlight. And if you're a mechanic, you can take courses and get AMT Awards Program courses or IA Renewal certified courses where you can get your certificate towards your 8 hours of education for your IA renewal. It's all in socialflight.com. It is all completely free and here to support you. Tonight's broadcast is brought to us by Lightspeed Aviation and the amazing Delta Zulu Headset with Kanari Carbon Monoxide, Smart Alert technology, and Hearing EQity, delivering crystal clear flight communications tailored to your individual hearing profile. And we just gave away a Delta Zulu headset in our FLY2WIN Challenge, and now we're giving away another one. And so all you need to do is get the free SocialFlight mobile app, get out there. You get points just for showing up, driving to your local airport, and for every other airport you go to. And it is not a winner take all. You just check in once, you are entered to win. And then if you do more and more and you get on our leaderboard, well, then you get extra entries into the FLY2WIN Challenge. And we want you to win. It's all here about supporting General Aviation. Now, I would like to begin tonight's show with a short story. A long time ago, a young man with no previous exposure to general aviation got to take a flight in a Cherokee. And he was sold on becoming a pilot from that moment forward. But shortly after that flight, he was given a set of King School VHS tapes to kick off his aviation journey. Not only did he get his pilot's license, but he was so inspired by the business that John and Martha King had built that he set out on his own entrepreneurial journey, creating his own video series, teaching about aircraft ownership and maintenance, went on to write for magazines, went on to develop avionics using his engineering background, and then got his A&P, his IA, he built an aviation products company, and an app to bring the general aviation community together. And all of this culminates tonight with the hosting of John and Martha King on this show celebrating inspirational voices of aviation, because they literally set me on my own journey of aviation along with millions of others along the way. John and Martha King are icons of pilot education. For the past 50 years, King Schools has delivered millions of courses to pilots in training, teaching more pilots than anyone in the history of aviation. I am far from alone in regarding John and Martha as personal aviation mentors. Through the years, the Kings have retained their enthusiasm for flying. They fly their own Dassault Falcon 10 jet wherever they go, swapping captain and co-pilot duties with each leg. They've flown as pilots in every continent of the world except Antarctica, including a trip completely around the world via the length of Russia. The list of their ratings and accomplishments is truly epic and far too long to list in this brief introduction, but in fact, John and Martha are the first and only husband and wife to hold both every category and class of FAA pilot and instructor certificates. I am absolutely thrilled to have them here on the show tonight. Please welcome to SocialFlight Live, John and Martha King. Hello, both of you. How are you?
Well, hello, Jeff. What a privilege it is to have played a role in your life when it means a lot to you. Because when you learn to fly, it means a lot to you. It's a great privilege. And we're glad to see you. Thank you for being
here. It's a delight to be with someone who's such a raving enthusiast, because as I understand, what we're seeing behind you there is the airplane that you're building in your, is that your living room or your kitchen?
This is my living room.
It's called Living with Your Aviation, Jeff.
Exactly. You can never get it. You can never get enough of it. And I will say that introduction is very, very sincere. Thank you both so much for everything you've given to General Aviation. And I'm thrilled to have you here among the inspiring guests and leading the pack there for what we're doing here to support them. So I would like to start people off a little bit with understanding a bit about your background. You have a book, Lift, that talks about your start, not just as pilots, but as a business, as forming King Schools, and how you did that. And in a way, it starts with coming from stumbling, which so many successful entrepreneurs talk about. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, as you allude to, we did go broke in our first business. And since then, we're not broke. We like not broke a lot better, by the way. And we've spent a lot of time thinking about why did we go broke in the first business and why aren't we broke now? And how come we're still eating regularly after being in the same business for 50 years? And we think the biggest difference between those two businesses is that we had a passion for this business. We love aviation, we love teaching aviation, and when you have a passion for something, you'll work harder, you'll work longer, you'll endure through difficulty, and we've had plenty of difficulty in this business. Everybody has plenty of difficulty in every business, and we've persisted because we have a passion for what we're doing. We really love it and love the people involved with it. I think flying attracts very, very special people who have lots of aptitudes, lots of capabilities, and helps them enjoy those capabilities and get the most out of them. It's a real privilege to be working with the pilots.
When we went broke in our first business, we were already pilots. And after we went broke, we looked around and said, boy, that hurt. Let's go do something for the fun of it for a while until a serious business comes along. And what we did is we designed a life that we felt we would enjoy. And that life was teaching ground schools on 2-day weekend ground schools to people in meeting rooms that we would rent in hotels in various cities, flying there in our own airplane. So we were flying together, flying our own airplane, spending the weekend talking to pilots about aviation. We couldn't imagine anything more fun than doing that. And we did that and enjoyed that enormously, doing it pretty much every weekend a year for 10 years.
Wow.
Go ahead, Jeff. You had something.
You obviously, part of the formula, and you talk about this in the book, is having such a successful partnership. Tell me a little bit about how you met and how aviation kind of also brought you together.
Well, the way we met is I first dated Martha's sister, and she rejected me with the words, "You'd really like my sister." And as it worked out, I did really like her sister, and Martha is her sister, of course. And when we decided we were going to pair up with each other, we decided we'd be equal partners in everything we would do. And when we have been equal partners, it's been 59 years we've been married. I've been struggling to be Martha's equal partner ever since, but I'm just barely making it as Martha's equal partner. And in that respect, Martha can do everything I can do just as well. When we started teaching the weekend ground schools, she taught instrument instructor in one classroom, and I taught private, commercial, and flight instructor in the other classroom. And we were in two paired up classrooms at that time. And when we were at registration in one city, a guy came to me and said, well, he kind of whispered in my ear and said, who's going to be teaching the instrument? And I said, well, Martha will. And he said, well, I had an instrument instructor once and she wasn't very good. And I paused and I said, well, the odds are they're not even related to each other. And
that was funny.
And I said, we'll make a deal. And our deal is, go ahead and give us your money, and we'll go until noon the first day. It's a 2-day weekend ground school. We'll go until noon the first day. And if at noon the first day you want your money back, just come to me and I'll give you your money back. and of course you then would leave the class at that point. And he came to me at noon the first day and said, "Oh my God, she's fantastic. Keep my money. I want to stay." And Martha is that fantastic, and that's the fact that she could keep these people, even people who were doubtful to begin with, is a testimony to that. And everything, we made sure that Martha's always on the video as much as I am, and I'm on the video as much as Martha is, and we've each been instructors in the ground school courses. And so the partnership is a big part of it. The fact that Martha's there working just as hard as I am every minute of every day, and actually working harder these days. So
when we got married and we were talking about this partnership, we kind of figured out that it was pretty likely that a company like General Motors wasn't going to hire both of us to share a job. And that's what made us decide that we really needed to be in our own business. And so the first business that we went broke in, we started while we were still in college. And we spent 5 years building it up and another 5 years trying to save it when it was going downhill. And then we went broke, and then we got into this. John had been interested in love with aviation, actually, ever since he was a kid. His father was a pilot and owned an airplane, although not a very elaborate one, not a very expensive one. But John flew with his father a lot and also with a family friend. And when we were in our first business, at one point, it was a franchising business for lubrications and oil changes. And we sold our first franchise, and we had both time and money. And John said, "I want to learn to fly." And I wasn't going to sit at home while he was out at the airport having fun. So although I hadn't had any real exposure to general aviation before at that point, we both started learning to fly together seriously. John had soloed when he was in high school and then quit his lessons in order to save money to go to college.
Well, I had to, Martha. It was costing me $8 an hour, including the instructor.
Times have changed.
Yeah.
That
was in 1960. Yeah, I had no choice. $8 an hour. I wanted to go on to college. I just couldn't continue paying that outrageous sum of money.
One of the things that is so important, of course, is there's your dedication and there's your teamwork and team approach to everything. But none of this would work if you weren't both extremely good educators and presenters. And the fact is, to this day, decades after learning some of the first things, I still have phrases in my head of high to low, look out below, and all these types of things. And I could probably still image exactly one of the two of you telling me these things each time. What went into that? What went into actually having the skill set, not just the knowledge book, but the real skill set to deliver something so compelling and so easy for students to retain?
Well, we were honest. Who gets to say it, Mark?
Jeff, was that we started doing the 2-day ground schools. And it was all on the job learning, but you really learn fast if you spend 2 days in a classroom with people, and then the FAA comes in and gives the test the next day. And in those days, this was in the mid-1970s, the FAA would send you a sheet afterwards that would list how many students took the instrument test, the private test, the commercial test, and so on, and they would tell you what % of them passed.
Also, I think we got what questions they missed as well.
And you got immediate feedback on whether or not your classes were effective. You didn't go a whole semester or a whole school year and then find out that you weren't effective. You knew it the very week after you had taught that class, and you could think about, well, what did I say, and can I do something different? And when you only have 2 days to get something done, you get very efficient about it, and you focus on getting into the topic correctly, because if you get into it wrong and confuse people, you're going to be a lot of time trying to get it straightened out.
So a lot of times you sit there and you have 50 people and you say, oh, 50 people can't be idiots. And then you realize there's only one idiot in this classroom, and you're the one that got them all confused to begin with. So we learned how to get into subjects well. We learned to use appropriate humor when it's supported learning. We learned to make up words like black square, you're there, high to low, look out below, those kinds of things. And you learn things that people would they would be in their heads, and they remember it, and they would remember it for decades. So and so we taught these weekend ground schools every weekend for 50 weekends a year, and we did it for 10 years. So we had done it in 10 years, we had done it 500 times. And someone said to us about that point when VHS came along, they said, you know, you should put these courses on video. And I said to them, well, that just goes to show you don't know anything about our business, because it won't work on video. And he said, we felt that we had to have our dynamic personal presence there for it to work. And he said, well, I don't know how you could say that if you haven't tried it. And so we tried it out on video, and much to our surprise, it worked on video. And it was a way of multiplying ourselves. And we wound up within a few years teaching half the pilots in the country learning to fly. So video was a powerful multiplication tool, and multiplied our efforts a lot. And so we learned from it. We learned the skills of doing video. We learned the presentations, and we learned to translate those presentations to video. So it worked out for us, but it's been a learning curve. We didn't start out knowing how to do this. We just learned.
Yeah, I have visions in my head of the two of you sitting around a kitchen table throwing phrases back and forth, like what do you think about this for compass stuff, such and such, and the other one
Right.
sitting there like, yeah, no.
Well, I'll tell you another one. We feel that we have secrets for entrepreneurs, and of course we've made up words for it. And some of those words are play Scrabble with TNT. And play stands for have a passion for what you're doing, that we do. The L in play is lots of interest, and the A is always learning, and the Y is yet again. So you have a habit of having lots of interest and always learning, and that's the play. The Scrabble letters refers to the game of Scrabble, and then Martha, you can do the Scrabble talk if you'd like to.
Well, in the game of Scrabble, you get 7 tiles and you combine them to try and make high value words. And the tiles, of course, have different values depending on which letter and how easy it is to use in a word. In the game of life, the Scrabble tiles are the passions and the interests that you have, things that you know more about than most other people do. And the neat thing about Scrabble letters in the game of life is you can have as many as you want. You're not limited in how many. It's just how many you have the energy and the interest and the passion to go out and get. And then once you have those Scrabble letters, 1 or 2 or 5 or 10, they play off of each other in interesting ways so that you don't really, often you don't really know how they're going to play off of each other until you've had that Scrabble letter for a while, and then you say, oh, I think I could do so-and-so, and you find out that that enhances your life or your business or your relationships. It gives you resources that you can use. So,
okay. And so we say play Scrabble, so we've got the play already, we've got the Scrabble okay, and then we say with TNT. And TNT is a dynamite tool, and the first T is you've got to be trustworthy, because if you aren't trustworthy, people won't work with you and commit to you. So you trust people that you believe respect you. You trust people that you believe have your interests at heart. You trust people that you believe are predictable and play by fair rules. So you want to be trustworthy. The N is the way you get ahead in life is seek out and take care of the needs of other people. And there are 4 groups you need to take care of the needs of. You need to take care of the needs of your customers. Otherwise, why would they spend money with you? You need to take care of the people who spend their lives working with you, your employees, and they devote the most precious thing they have. They devote their time and their lives with you. And so you need to take care of their needs. Otherwise, why would they do that? And finally, the next group you need to take care of is vendors. It's counterintuitive that you would seek out and take care of the needs of your vendors. But if you do that, we have evidence that it pays off very well. We had a printer who had a fire, and we went out and after the fire, we went in the next day and paid for about the next 6 jobs we were going to do. And it got him back on his feet and kept him in business. Boy, that was that guy ever taking care of our needs as well. I mean, he just couldn't do enough for us. And so taking care of other people's needs is secret. And what everybody's thinking about, what you're thinking about right now, is with them. What's in it for me? Why am I sitting here listening to this stuff? And is it worthwhile for me to stay here and listen to this stuff? And so we think that everybody's thinking about with them, and we need to think about everybody else's with them to get ahead. So those are the needs. So, and then the last T is you triumph with the solution to other people's needs. So you play Scrabble with TNT. And it might be helpful to explain this, to talk about what our Scrabble letters are. Our Scrabble letters are, one, we have a passion for aviation. We can teach aviation. Another Scrabble letter we have is we learn direct marketing. We can mail out mailers and get people to come to our classes. Another Scrabble letter we have is now video. And so we put all of these Scrabble's letter together over a period of time, and it's made a business. It's still around. Martha, you want to add something to that?
Well, when we first started, as John said, we had a passion for aviation, but that doesn't do much for you without something else. And so the teaching let us do the ground school classes, but originally we were just putting up posters around local FBOs. We'd have classes of 3 to 6 or maybe 7 people. And then when we learned direct mail, that's when we really basically got a business, because now we could mail out to people in like a 300-mile radius around places like Spokane, Washington, and Billings, Montana, places like that, where people who had a need to fly, to have that kind of transportation, but didn't have the services for ground school, and flight training was available, ground school less so, would come in and come to a 2-day weekend ground school. So that's, as I say, when we really got a business. And when we got to video, then we could package ourselves up, if you will, and ship ourselves off in boxes to people, and they could watch us in their living rooms and learn at home, and whenever it was convenient for them. And then we added on to that the interactivity with a computer, and then going online, both for providing the programs and also for making purchases available online. And each one added to the other, and no one of those Scrabble letters standing alone would have done much just by itself, but they just kept adding on a little bit more and boosting the business and making it more fun, because you can probably tell by the fact that we have a lot of we have ratings in a lot of categories and classes that we like learning, and we like learning about new things, we like learning about video and understanding it and solving the problems, and the same for working with computers and on the internet. And we have acquired some very, very talented people, team members working with us over time, who have taught us a great deal about both video and computers and internet, and we've learned a lot from people. And that's a real valuable lesson in life, is if you're in a business and you're hiring people, try to hire people who know more than you do. so that they can add to your business and they can educate you, and you can grow together.
Well, we mentioned our book. The name of it is Lift, but it's actually Lift: How to Start, Run, and Grow Your Own Successful Business. And of course, what the book is going to say is play Scrabble with TNT. So we always make stuff up, and we made that up, and I think it will help people remember what the book is about.
Absolutely. And you know, your story talks so much and so powerfully about putting your skill sets together and kind of adding all these pieces that slowly come into place and gel to expand your presence. Tell me a little bit about how you at some point have to also control that to not expand into, like, let's say, areas that aren't necessarily a competency or an area that you want to go into. Is this a challenge that you've faced during that time? I'm sure people, once you're successful and the King name is out there, I am sure people want to have you expand into things everywhere that would dilute also what your focus.
Well, I think the key to it is have a passion for it. If you have a passion for it, maybe it's worth it to go into those things. We did ham radio courses at one time, and with the American Radio Relay League, ARRL.
Right.
They did okay, but they had more frequent test changes, and we had to redo the course every time they changed the test. And we decided that we would be better off focusing on our aviation, where we had much more of a passion. So it was okay, but the aviation's for us.
Makes a lot of sense. So what kind of milestone would you say kind of happened along the way that was one of the biggest things for you? Was it perhaps the first time there was an aircraft giveaway, the first time there was when you got the jet? Like, what was there some seminal moment that you were like, time to pinch yourselves?
Well, yes, we have this Falcon 10 now, which is 150 knots faster than the first airplane we had, which was a Citation 500, and it was a jet. But this is 150 knots faster than that jet. So yeah, we're pinching ourselves about that. We really like that airplane, and it's got tremendous capability. It goes over 500 miles an hour, and we're not that fast. So that's the insurance company had grave concerns when we first started, and they said, look, John, Martha, we want to make sure that you get the full 3-week ground school course in the simulator, and we will make sure you get that. We did that, and we sweated bullets. It was very difficult for us. We got done. We figured we must have done pretty well, because the instructor said, John, Martha, I've got wonderful news for you. And I said, oh, that's what's that? He says, well, you'll never have to worry about a mid-air collision in this airplane. And I said, that's wonderful. Why not? He says, you're so far behind this airplane, you won't even be involved. You're going to come walking up to the crash site some 15 minutes later and say, what happened here?
Another seminal moment for us is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, and that's when we got our airship, our blimp ratings. We had a very good friend who had a very good friend of his was the chief pilot for the Fujifilm blimp, and they were always looking for passionate aviators who had the right background that they thought for flying an airship, and would train them up on the job training and have them available to help out at various events. For instance, they would fly the airship as a camera ship over the US Tennis Open in New York, and they were flying for like 21 plus days every day in the summer and the thermals, and it was very, very tiring. So they would pull in standby crew members, if you want to call us that, from all over the country, and we would go up 6 at a time in the airship and just rotate through the pilot seats, and everyone would get about an hour flying at the controls, and then you'd be exhausted and get out, and somebody else would come in. But it's
I can explain why those controls are so tiring. You have a little control wheel and you're moving the great big rudder back there and great big elevators, and you're moving those big control surfaces with that little wheel, and the pressures were it took a lot of pressure to control it.
Those they're just in the Fujifilm airship, the Skyship, they're just cable controlled. There's no hydraulics, there's nothing helping you out on that, and it takes a big crew. Over on the side in that picture that you've got up there, Jeff, John and I are in the white shirts off to one side, and the chief pilot, John McHugh, is off on the other side, and all the people in red shirts are the ground crew. And it took about a crew of about 21, 22 people when you are operating the Skyship, because it took a lot of people to handle it on the ground and to make sure that it got moored safely and so on. But when we got done with the Skyship rating in order, and they got us our commercial rating so that we could actually get paid, and that's the only time actually that we've been paid to operate as a crew member, we realized at that point, you know, the airship, the blimp rating is the one rating that almost nobody can get because there's no school for it. You have to basically work your way in to a particular airship operation and show that you're really enthusiastic, and you do on-the-job training, and that they will train you for the job on their airship. And once we had that rating, we looked at each other and said, you know, we could go on and we could get gyroplane, and we could do hot air balloon, and we could finish off with glider, and we could just get all of this stuff. And multi-engine C, we already had our seaplane ratings, and that's what made us interested really, and made it possible for us to get every category in class.
Wow. I have to ask first on the airship side of things. What is a check ride like on an airship?
Well, it's actually difficult. The blimp is the hardest aircraft that we have ever flown. It's very hard to fly, and I can go into about a 5-minute spiel when Martha was. You know, one of the things they do, if you're getting ready to fly a blimp, you have all these ground crew, they're all standing around, and they'll lift it up off the ground, and then they'll let it go, and then watch what it does. Does it go up? Does it go down? Is it lighter than air, or is it heavier than air right now?
Or does it just sit there? Is it at equilibrium?
Yeah, right. They call that EQ in blimp talk. But so when you're being trained to be the captain in a blimp, you're in the captain's seat, and they do that. That's called a way off. They just pick it up and let it go. And then the crew chief stands in front of you, and you communicate by hand signals. And the crew chief wants to know how much ballast do you want and where do you want it. And if you're the captain of the blimp, you realize, well, we're going to go up and we're going to do a shot around the new U.S. Tennis Open, and if we're real heavy at the time, we're going to be using a lot of power, and that will distract the tennis players, and they get mad at you and tell you that. So you don't really want to. You want to be at EQ during the event when you're going to be shooting. We were the camera for ABC, and so if you're being the camera for the event, you got to fly over the event, but you can't make a lot of noise and you can't distract anybody. Plus, you can't drag the shadow of the blimp over the event because the light would come and go, and these guys would all be distracted. So you try and get a tight camera shot without distracting anybody. And so to do that, you have to have that blimp at EQ at that time, to have good control over it and so on at that time in the air. So what you're going to think about is, do I have superheat? Superheat is when the sun shines on the blimp envelope and the air in the helium in the blimp gets hotter than the ambient air. Well, hot air it makes it lighter, and it tends to get light. And so if you got superheat, it's hotter than ambient, it's going to be lighter than it would be otherwise. So if you get up and get flying and you fly in colder air, that superheat will go away, and then all of a sudden the blimp gets heavy again. And so you have to know, do I have superheat now? Will I have superheat later? And how much superheat do I have? And how much of my lift right now is due to superheat? And how much will be due to superheat later? And then how much fuel am I going to use before I get over the event? And so you think about all of it. Is there anything on the, like, is there dew on the surface of the blimp that makes it heavier than it would be? They call that weather effect. So you're thinking about all of those, and then you're looking at crew chief in the eye, and you tell them, I want 2 bags in the rear and 2 bags in the front. And they'll open the doors and put the bags in the compartments for the shot bags. The shot bags are about 20 pounds each. So you got to have some estimate of where you want them and how much you want. And you're doing all this math about what's the temperature going to be up there? How much fuel is my fuel going to weigh when I get up there? So you're doing all of that math, and you're doing it while sitting in that seat, looking at the crew chief in the eye.
Wow. And so Martha, for your check ride, do they do any of the traditional things? We're going to go up, you're going to lose an engine. we're gonna
Actually, we didn't do any single engine work, which is an interesting thing. But on the commercial check ride that we did, the FAA inspector asked for an ILS approach, and the tower was not happy. I mean, the top speed in the Fujifilm blimp was about 55 miles an hour, and it cruised more comfortably at around 40. So here we are tootling down the ILS at 40 miles an hour, and the tower's just tearing their hair out. Won't they ever get here? Good heavens. But one of the things that John was referring to on all of this, what the crew chief does and what the captain does, when John and I were getting trained, they were also training a new crew chief. And on one of my flights, we got to the point where he was staring intently through the front of the gondola, and I was staring at me, and I was staring intently out of the windshield at him. And for the moment, neither one of us could remember whose move it was next and who had to make a decision or a request or do something. And we were just staring like deer at each other, and deer in headlights. You know, it was funny afterwards.
Well, on my commercial check ride, I had a temperature inversion. And a temperature inversion is instead of being cooler air above, you have warmer air above. And the problem with an airship, a blimp, it's hard to get it through a temperature inversion. And here's why. Let's assume that you're down below and you've got cool air down below. Cool air would make the helium colder than normal, and so therefore it'd be heavier. So when you get to the temperature inversion where it's warmer above, it just sinks right back down again because it's heavy and cold. And so you have to fly in the temperature inversion for a while to get the helium warm, and then you can get up into the warmer air above. Coming down, you're in warm air above, the warmer air above, and you're trying to sink into the cool air below. But when you take that warm helium and you hit that cool air down below, it wants to go back up again. So it's hard to get through a temperature inversion. And if you're a learning pilot in a blimp, you may not figure out what's going on. Why can't I get this aircraft to go up, or why can't I get it to go down? And on a commercial check ride, that's a scary deal. And I had a temperature inversion on my commercial check ride. We never flunked any of them. And then another thing, the way you hover a blimp is that blimp always operates into the ambient wind. And so if you want to hover, what you do is figure out where the ambient wind is from, point it into the ambient wind, and then match your speed with the speed of the ambient wind. So I had my examiner said, I want you to hover over that point on a heading of 270 degrees. And I can't guarantee that because I have to know what the ambient wind is. So I said to him, I'll hover over that point over with whatever heading it takes. And I think that's what he was asking me to do. The pilot command said, I can't do that. And so,
except I'm not exactly sure that he knew you couldn't do that. So
Yeah, I imagine. I can also imagine that you've got a ground crew there that's very much rooting for you to pass.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Like
they
we
are.
don't want to keep holding on these ropes again.
The
They
biggest thing
are
that they're
very
rooting
much
for.
rooting for you to get better and better and better so you don't drag them across the ground. And you owe them a couple of cases of beer when you finally get good enough that you're treating them right.
That's that's impressive. So you got your blimp rating. What were you left with at that point? Now that you decided that you were going to knock out all the other ratings?
Well, we went out and got hot air balloon and gas balloon and seaplane, small engine C. What else, Martha, can you think of?
Um, I'm not sure whether we had the glider rating by then or not. But we finished off things for sure, like the gyroplane and the multi-engine C and stuff like that.
Yeah, and when we got the instructor for each of those as we went through them.
I didn't realize that gas balloon versus hot air balloon were different.
Yes, you get a restriction when you get a hot air balloon. It says limited to airborne heater, and that means you can't fly it with a gas. It has to have an airborne heater.
So
We went to Amarillo and Texas, where the helium storage, National Helium Reserve is, and did our helium balloon flight there, and got that restriction removed from that. Interestingly, also, a lot of people may not know that as far as gliders are concerned, most people do an aerial tow, have a tow plane to go up with a glider, but you can also do it with a winch. And so initially you get, if you do an aero tow, you get a glider rating with a restriction aero tow only. And then if you want to have that restriction removed, you have to go back and get training and get signed off to do it with a ground-based winch.
Wow.
And there are some risks associated with a winch. If it won't release, you're in a world of hurt because you're going to go right back down again. So there are risks that you need to know how to manage. What do you do if it doesn't release, and those kinds of things.
But the really fun thing for all of this, Jeff, and the reason that we went ahead and did it was not so much for the ratings, you know, to say, oh, we have every category in class, but for the learning, because the reason that the Fujifilm people were interested in us as airship pilots is at that point we were already helicopter pilots and we already had our single engine seaplane ratings. So we were used to operating off of airports, off of runways, and airships very seldom use a runway. They can make an approach to one, but they're not going to tie down in your normal transient ramp. They're going to be in a field off to the side somewhere. And sometimes there's no airport even close. They're in a field that they've arranged for somewhere. And you're also, particularly as a seaplane pilot, you're very wind aware. And so they were looking for people who were used to off-airport operations, who were wind aware, who were used to oddball kinds of approaches and not necessarily the standard paved, towered runway and airport. And so that is what really helped us as far as having the opportunity to get our airship ratings. But everything we learned in all these different ones, we could see how certain principles would also apply in other categories and other classes, and we just found the interplay very interesting.
Yeah, the whole we love flying, and it just opens up the world to you. Yeah, I mean, we've flown over the Super Bowl and the playoffs for the Super Bowl, and we've just taken us to a lot of places. What? Kentucky Derby, yes.
The Kentucky Derby.
Right.
That is so cool. So at some point when you have, now that you have all those ratings, I'm just kind of curious, does that mean that your licenses have more lines than anybody else, or do you just have some gold plated ticket that says not that like just says all on it or something?
No, we just have more lines than anybody else.
Yeah. And it's still on one certificate, Jeff, sorry.
I wasn't sure if there's some magic gold certificate you're about to pull out that's like most people have plastic now. Ours are like
Plastic, just like everybody. Yeah. But
so
fun.
let's talk a little bit about pilot education.
Okay.
Tell me, obviously the medium has changed, right? From VHS to DVDs to the online. What has been the biggest change that each of you have noted in the industry or in the concept of education or working on pilot education, other than just that, how it gets, the medium it's delivered on?
Well, it's access to aviation education. There are people who didn't have ready access before, and I'll tell you kind of a funny story. There's an organization called Organization of Black Aerospace Pilots, or Black Airline Professionals now. Aerospace professionals, right? And it's called OBAP. And the chairman of OBAP said, we would like to put you in our Hall of Fame. And we kind of thought that was unfair because it would deprive someone that we felt maybe really deserved to be in our Hall of Fame. And we said, half jokingly and half seriously, you realize we're white, don't you? And she said, yes, we know exactly what we're doing. We would like you to be in our Hall of Fame. And so we showed up, and it was at Los Angeles International Airport, and they have a place there. And we got met by just tons of Black people in airline uniforms. And they said to us, you know, you made my life possible. I couldn't do this if it weren't for you. And they all said that. And we thought, well, wait a minute. And the deal is, in the early days when we started teaching ground schools on video, it was very difficult for a Black person to get into a ground school course. They couldn't get in. And if they could just buy a ground school course from us, they made it accessible to them. And not only that group of people, we've got customers from Russia, customers from China, customers from Saudi Arabia, and they can do a ground school course from John and Martha in their own living room, wherever it is. So it's made aviation education accessible. So the biggest change that has come about is aviation education is accessible when it wouldn't have been otherwise.
That's fascinating.
I would think that probably equal with that, if maybe not, in my opinion, even a little more important, is the shift in emphasis towards risk management as far as aviation education is concerned. You know, pilots have told each other the big lie for decades, which is the most dangerous part of the trip was the drive to the airport. And that is true for airline flying, but it is not at all true for general aviation flying. And if you never admit that there is a risk, then you've got no way to think about it and to mitigate it and to have good risk management. And I hope that King Schools has done a lot to help bring focus on the need for risk management. We have, in the process of teaching ground schools 50 weekends a year for 10 years, we had some number of students who eventually killed themselves in airplanes. And that hurts. That makes you really wonder if you're doing enough, are you teaching the right things, and made us focus much more on, frankly, trying to get the FAA to focus more in their knowledge testing and in their practical testing, the check rides, on evaluating risk management so that people were really ready, not just with physical maneuvering of the airplane, but ready to be pilot in command and make good risk management decisions.
We had Well, first of all, we became very fond of our customers. We were looking them in the eye for 10 years. We taught 50 weekends a year for 10 years. And we had a policy that once someone took one of our classes, they could come back to that class for free as many times as they wanted to. And as it worked out, it was a good policy for us because they almost always brought a friend with them. And so our classes just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Another thing that happened that got bigger is the parties, because we were sending out a mailer to all the pilots within about a 300-mile radius saying John and Martha are going to teach a class here, and they would call us up and they would want to have a party. And so we had to manage that. That was a risk for us because everybody wanted to have parties, but we did, and we got to know these people. We became great friends with pilots all over the country, and occasionally we would have a pilot that we saw that was going to have a problem, and they did have a problem, and they wound up getting killed in an airplane. And we kind of made the decision, we're not going to stand by and let that happen without doing something about it. And we felt that way about pilots, and gradually we began to feel that way about the whole aviation community. We weren't going to stand by and as a community let people kill themselves when it wasn't necessary. And so we started working on the idea of helping people understand that we have a talk called the Straight Talk About Safety. And what we're saying is safety is the outcome that you want, but the way you get there is you figure out the risks and manage those, mitigate those risks in advance. It's risk management, but you have to understand the risks, admit the risks, and focus on those risks, or else you're not going to have safety. And so we're trying to get the whole community to do that, and we're not going to stand by and let the community bring themselves to grief without our doing something about it.
That seems like a extremely admirable, but also a very, very difficult thing to accomplish. I mean, the classic story that most pilots have seems to be that as their flying careers, build, they build more skills, better ability to avoid problems, and at the same time, they are now making better decisions and taking on less and less and less risk the older they get.
That's true.
With more skills, and yet the problem is always, how do we take the knowledge and kind of rational caution, rational fear,
talking about the right
to a
things.
younger pilot, get that to someone who doesn't have the skills.
Yeah, right. They talk about controlled flight into terrain, and they talk about loss of control, and particularly with loss of control. The way it comes about is a pilot gets themselves into a situation where they're asking more than they can do and more than the airplane can do. And the ultimate result of that is loss of control of the aircraft. They stall it on a turn from base to final. So the key is you've got to anticipate that situation will cause you that problem, and that comes with experience. The pilots get themselves in a situation by not recognizing this is a risky situation, and they get into loss of control. And so basically, experience tells people what the risks are and how they mitigate them. And so our job in some respect is to let people recognize what the risks are. If they don't recognize them, they're not going to do a good job of mitigating them.
Right.
So the more experience they have, the more you can connect with them, the more they understand the risks, and the more you can talk about it. The problem with what we're doing is it makes people mad because they don't want their family and friends to know that it's a risky situation. And so it makes people mad to talk about risks.
Yeah, we have to be very open about talking about that. That's for sure. One of the other areas that obviously there's been a lot of change over the last 5 to 10 years, maybe, seems to be that if you go back in time a bit, then you had yourselves, the King's schools teaching, as well as a few other kind of stalwarts of the industry that we knew were vetted, that we knew the education that you were providing was well thought out, correct information, all the things that go along with it. Now we are in a world where you can watch anything on YouTube by anybody or anything that's out there by anybody. The bonus is there's an enormous amount of content that's out there. The downside is how do you know it's accurate? How do you know you're getting good advice? That's the right thing. Tell me what each of your thoughts are in this world of trusted versus unvetted education.
Your turn, Martha.
Tried to put me on a spot there, aren't you?
That's too tough a question.
You know, there's ways to explore on the web and find out what the credentials are of the people that are teaching on YouTube or posting videos, and looking at reviews from reliable sources and so on, and who they associate with and what kinds of programs and organizations they're involved with. And those are all useful ways to help evaluate whether somebody is giving you good, responsible information that will be valuable risk management or not. That's one of the reasons trying to get good information out there that John was involved for, is still involved with the FAA's aviation, the ARAC, the aviation, I forget the acronym.
Advisory Committee, but the Airman Certification Standards. I was in in a working group that helped create the Airman Certification Standards and the concept of it. And as you may know, Airman Certification Standards take the same physical skills, and they have not changed those standards, but they've added a requirement for standards for knowledge. And the FAA used to almost make up stupid things in knowledge. They would have you take the distance to take off on the runway, and then they'd have it in between categories. They have you do double interpolations, and they say, is it 1,530 feet, 1,540 feet, 1,560 feet, and which is correct? And that's stupid. The smart way to do it is pick the more conservative answer and just say, well, I need 1,550, and that's the more conservative answer. And so and that implies a precision that you're not going to get from the aircraft. The airplane is not the same as it was when it was new. You're not going to get it from the pilot either. Some days you're more fatigued than others, and you don't want to imply that you're going to be that precise on your takeoff. So I think that as a result, we made standards for knowledge so that you didn't require double interpolations. We also made standards for risk management. Originally in the practical test standards, pilots weren't required to demonstrate their ability to identify and mitigate risks. Now we require pilots on the Airman Certification Standards to identify and mitigate risk. And if you're a pilot in command, that's something you really do need to know. And so we're asking pilots to do that kind of thing where we never asked them that before. So I think we've made some improvements in the way we evaluate pilots as a result of the Airman Certification Standards.
That makes a lot of sense. And I guess, that we just encourage people that are out there that, you know, to make sure you're getting your information from a good source. It's one thing if you're just trying to pass a written exam. It's another thing entirely if someone is teaching you techniques for, you know, short field landings and takeoffs and other things, and you're just going to try something maybe that you saw online. Go to the source. Make sure you're getting it from a reputable source. Don't be a test pilot.
Yeah, one of the things that has happened as a result of the social media is that people are exchanging written exam questions, and there are companies that pay people to give them the questions that they took on the test, and people are taking the questions and not taking ground schools. So there's actually probably overall fewer people taking ground schools than they used to, and probably not an adequate way to go about it is exchanging test questions. And so that's happening. Those kinds of things happen online now.
Yep. Well, that's certainly makes sense and supports, you know, 50 years of education from King schools, and and being able to go on and get some of the best and latest education that both of you are providing. So John and Martha, we'd like to end every program with our SocialFlight's Fast Five. And this is just a wonderful opportunity for people to get to know you. And we also take this section out separately so that people can get to know you with that. So there are no wrong answers. They're all fun. I will go to each of you separately. So that's who I'll be asking.
Okay.
And then the other person will have a chance. And I'll alternate who goes first. So no one's unfairly getting asked for the first time each one. So John and Martha King, are you ready for SocialFlight's Fast Five?
Let's give it a shot.
Okay, John, I'm going to start with you, and the first question is very simple, straightforward, but I am sure it is not a simple answer, and that is, of all the aircraft that you have flown during your career, what is one that is nearest and dearest to your heart?
Well, it depends on what we're trying to do. If I want to fly VFR, looking out the window and enjoying the view, I want to fly a helicopter. And our Robinson R-22 is a great one. It's got all sorts of windows. If I want to go somewhere fast, I want to fly a Falcon 10.
Okay. And Martha, if we just said, boom, what's the first thing that pops into your head if you just get out there and your favorite aircraft, what would that be?
Well, it's not one that I can fly very much, but I fell in love with the airship because it is so stately and it is so reminiscent of the golden age of flight, if you will. And it's once you feel at least somewhat in control of it, it's so special and a real thrill. I loved it.
The airship, that's absolutely wonderful. Well, Martha, we'll have you go first now for question number 2, and that is, obviously you're going to have ups and downs in the flying career. What is a moment that you found of flying, a memory that you have of something that was concerning, that was a little bit of a little scary or set you on a different course during your flying?
Well, when we were teaching the 2-day ground schools, at one time we were flying a turbocharged Cessna 210. And due to some stupidity on our part and very poor risk management, which we talk about in some of our safety talks, we ended up with no electrical power over an overcast and landing the airplane, descending through clouds and landing it at night in a cornfield in Iowa. And neither one of us was hurt significantly. I got a cut in the back of my head from a toolkit that was in the back of the airplane and went flying out through the windshield. But it made us really change how we thought about risk management, and it also made us buy a twin-engine airplane.
And John, same question to you. Would it be that same story, or is there something else that sticks out to you as a moment of learning?
Well, we had a Cessna 340 that we used to fly. It was a turbocharged twin-engine pressurized airplane, and we used to fly it at 22,000 feet all the time. And one of the things that we did not know, and there was a safety bulletin about it, is if you fly even a gasoline-driven airplane at high altitudes in very cold air for a long period of time, there is water that's in suspension in the fuel, and it can actually form ice crystals and block your fuel supply. And we were flying in the vicinity of Farmington, New Mexico, and had a double engine failure, and both engines quit. And if you're familiar with Farmington, it's on a plateau, and there's a cliff at each end, and you have to get over that cliff to get onto the plateau and land on it. And we did that and did a dead stick landing in a twin engine airplane. And I got on the phone and I called Cessna, and that guy did a really good job with me. And I said, I don't want to get back in this airplane until I understand why it happened, why it's not going to happen again. And he told me this story, that there's a service bulletin, and that what they recommended you use either de-icer or isopropyl alcohol in the fuel. And we kept isopropyl alcohol in a tank all the time anyway because it was using it for the windshield de-icing. And so we just added to the isopropyl alcohol and always put some in our fuel every trip, and that solved that problem.
Wow, that are two harrowing stories. That is something.
Yeah.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead, Jeff.
So back to you for question number 3, John, first, and that is, if just for your own enjoyment, you were able to go back to some moment of your life to re-experience for 15 minutes or so and be able to be there, what moment is it you'd love to just go re-experience?
I just love flying a helicopter in remote areas. I enjoy going to the deserts and seeing the flowers. I just love taking the helicopter to places you can't go otherwise. So I would say that's it.
Excellent. And Martha, same question to you. If you could kind of teleport into something from your own history.
Well, it wouldn't be very easy to do anymore, but I really enjoyed. In 2003, we did an around the world trip in the Falcon 10 through Iceland and through Norway and through Russia and back to Alaska, not down at the equator, so it didn't really count as an around the world trip. But for us it did, because we just kept going east and we finally ended up back in San Diego. And I really enjoyed just the whole experience of that and the notice, and I guess particularly Iceland. Iceland has some really dramatic scenery, and it was a very special country.
That's absolutely wonderful. I love that, and yeah, I love that you never change direction. You just keep going. I like that.
Flew east the whole time.
Okay, Martha, you're up for question number 4, and that is, if you could then go back in time and give advice or say something to your younger self from your teens or your 20s and parachute back, what is it that you wish you knew back then, something you could tell yourself?
What do I wish I know? What do I know now that I would like to have told myself back then? That's interesting. Probably just, I would say, be adventurous, be bold, have fun. But I think I ended up pretty much doing that because we got married, John and I, when John was 21 and I was 19. And we were very soon after that in business together. So later in life, I'll tell you what I would say. When we went broke in our first business, we spent 10 years just chugging along, enjoying the teaching the 2-day ground schools, and we were very, very conservative in business as far as any expansion or growth or anything like that, and we were too conservative. We let it mentally handicap us too much for too long, and I regret that. And I would tell my earlier self, although not quite in the teens at that point, obviously, to get over it and get on with it.
I love that. And John, to you, just younger self, any advice that you would give if you could go back and talk to that younger John?
Well, this may be a bit unfair, but because Martha's already answered, but I think I was very fortunate to pick a partner that was absolutely competent and trustworthy and fun-loving and willing to put in effort in life. And for me, our partnership is the key to my life, and I think that I had no idea that I was going to be able to form that kind of partnership with someone, and that I wanted to. And I was very, very, very nerdy, and I still am pretty nerdy. I was very nerdy, And I had no idea how important it was that I have that relationship.
That's absolutely wonderful. And so, John, to you, the last question you get to kick off, and that is, if you could choose anybody from past, present, with us or no longer with us, that it would be a dream person for you to sit down, have a dinner or a beer with, or whatever it is, and have a chat with. Is there anyone who comes to mind?
That is someone that I maybe not have known. Just
Yes,
in
anybody from
history.
history or present, anyone that you say, boy, if I could just snap my fingers and sit down and have a drink with this person or whatever.
Well, I'm very limited. I don't really have someone that I idolize that much, and I've been thinking there's my guidance, and I'd like to learn from that person. No, I don't have anyone like that.
No problem.
I really don't have idols.
But
That
not idols,
is enough.
but somebody that you would enjoy having dinner with. And I think it would be the same for both of us. We've just finished reading David McCullough's book about Truman, President Truman, and we both came away very, very impressed with what he did as president, and the way he thought and the way he conducted himself. And clearly he was not a perfect person. Nobody is, and nobody does everything right as president, but he had very strong principles and had strong philosophy, and to the very best of his ability, he adhered to that and did the best he could to stave off a third world war, frankly. And we both came away very impressed with that.
That's true.
That's wonderful. That's a great answer. I love that.
Yeah, it's true. He was very impressive.
Perfect. Well, I just want to thank both of you so much for taking time out of your evening to join us here on SocialFlight Live, and more so for taking and dedicating your lives to general aviation and sharing so much of your knowledge and accomplishments with us, at making so many pilots, and then also through your book, helping people understand how to follow in your footsteps with their own careers and following their own goals, and to play Scrabble with TNT. I absolutely love that. So thank you both so much for joining us here.
Well, thank you very much.
Have a wonderful evening.
It's a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
And thank you all for taking time out of your evening to join us here on SocialFlight Live. We'll be off next week, but back again on Tuesday, May 7th with Sean D. Tucker. And if you have ever seen Sean speak, you know that he has an energy level that rivals the sun itself. And so I am so excited to have Sean join us here on the show to talk about his life story and so many other things. And then in that similar vein, as we head into air show season on Tuesday, May 14th, the amazing Patty Wagstaff will be here on SocialFlight Live. Until next time, I'm Jeff Simon for SocialFlight. Blue skies.